they're going to ask you, are these enough or are these sides long enough to create a triangle? Okay? And we need to have a way to determine that without having to draw it out. Okay? So it says that the sum of the lengths of any two sides of a triangle is greater than the length of the third side, and this is called the triangle inequality theorem. Okay, so this is kind of like a rule that we can use from here on out. Okay, so this rule says you should be able to pick any two sides in the triangle and add them up, and they should have a greater sum than whatever the third side is. Okay, so first they have AB, which would be this red side here, plus BC, this blue side right here, is greater than AC. So if I add those two up, it would have to be greater than the green side. Okay. Next they said the green side, AC, plus the blue side, BC, would have to have a greater length than whatever the red side is, AB. And then the last one says AB, the red side, plus AC, the green side, is going to have a greater length than whatever BC is. Okay, so we don't want to have to add them up all three ways every single time, right? So the way to ensure that it will work is if I add up the two shortest sides and it's greater than the biggest side, then it should work no matter what, right? So whenever you are going to determine what you want to add, pick the two smallest sides to add. That way we're not having to do it all three ways like they did here every single time. Okay? Alright, so keeping that in mind, if I'm supposed to be adding the two smallest sides, this next section says determine if each set of numbers could represent the lengths of the sides of a triangle and answer yes or no. Okay, so on number 1, out of the three side lengths they gave me, what would be the two smallest sides? 10 and 20. So those are going to be the two that I picked to add together. Okay, so I'll have 10 plus 20. And according to our rules up here, the two that you add together have to be greater than whatever the third side is. And what's our third side? 30. And then we just check to see if it's a true statement or not. So what is 10 plus 20? 30. So is 30 greater than 30? No. So this is not true. So would this make a triangle? No. Okay. Same idea for number 2. What are my two smallest sides that I'm going to pick to add together? Right. So I have 6 plus 8 must be greater than, right. Okay, and what is 6 plus 8? 14. Good. And is 14 greater than 10? So would this make a triangle? Yes. Okay, got one more to look at like this. What two terms am I going to add together on number 3? Good. And those would have to be greater than, right? And what is 5 plus 7? Nice. So is this going to make a triangle? No. Oops. Not true, so not a triangle. All right, so like I said, so that you don't have to add it up all three ways, if you'll just pick the smallest two to add, it'll let you know if it's going to work or not, okay? Now, sometimes they might just give you two of the sides and ask you what could the third side potentially be, right? Well, there's a lot of things that are bigger than 14, right? So it probably isn't going to necessarily just be one specific number. It might be a range of numbers that it could fall into, right? So they say to write this as an inequality. So if you look at this next section, it says to write an inequality to show the possible integer values for x. So we're missing one of the three sides. They want us to determine what the possible values of that side could be. It's probably going to be a range of numbers. Okay, so something we need to think about is in the rule we just discussed, you always add the two shortest sides, right? It has to be greater than the biggest side. But do we have any way of knowing if the side that's missing is going to be one of the two short sides or if it's going to be the biggest side? So we have to consider that it could be either one. Okay. All right, so first let's consider that x is the smallest side. Okay, so if x is my smallest side, and I was going to use that rule that we just talked about from above, I would be adding x with the other smallest side, right? So what is the other smallest side here? Okay, so we should have x plus 6 should be greater than the third side, which in this case is going to be 7x. Okay, so now I just need to determine what values of x would make this statement true, or basically solve for x. So if I wanted to get x by itself here, what am I going to do?
Subtract 6.
Right. I'm going to subtract 6. And what is 7 minus 6? 1. So in other words, x could be any number as long as it's larger than 1, and it would make this statement true. Right? Okay? All right, so x definitely has to be bigger than 1. But we also have to consider that maybe x is the biggest side, right? So now let's consider if x is the longest side. Okay? If x is the longest side, then I'm going to add the two shortest sides together, which would now be, right? And they would have to give me a sum greater than that longest side, which is what we're saying is x, right? Okay, so what is 6 plus 7? 13, okay? So if x is the biggest side, we're saying it can't be any larger than 13, right? Or it wouldn't follow the rule. Okay. All right, so x has to be less than 13, but greater than 1, or it's between 1 and 13, right? So if I was to write that as an inequality, I would have 1 is less than x is less than 13. All right. Okay, same thing for number 5. First, we're going to consider that our x is the smallest side. And if that's the case, what would I set up if x is the smallest side?
4 plus x is greater than 3.
Very good. Okay. And then I would need to determine what values of x would make this statement true. So solve for x. Okay, so what are we going to end up with when we solve for x?
X is greater than 3.
Right. So it just could be anything larger than 0. Any small decimal or fraction, all the way up to our really big numbers, right? Would make this statement true. But there's probably going to be a cap on that, right? So now I'm going to look at it being the longest side. All right, and if x is my longest side, what am I going to set up? Good. And what statement would make this true? Nice. All right, so 8 is greater than x. X is greater than 0. What am I going to write as my inequality up here on the line?
0 is less than x, which is at less than 3.
Very good. So it ranges anywhere from 0 to 8. Good job. Okay, I'm going to pass out the practice that goes with this. On these problems, I need to see, I know you guys know how to add small numbers in your head, but I need to see what it is that you chose as your small side and your long side, okay? So you need to write this part down and then give me your yes or no, all right?